Hey everyone, welcome back to another iteration of Apptica Talks podcast. And today I'm excited to host a great experts from Sunday, Vladislav Ladizhenski, head of growth, and Umut Önel, game lead. Hey guys, thanks for sharing the studio with us today. How are you?
Good, cool.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Great. So we have many topics actually to expand on, from prototyping to scaling of hypercasual games. So honestly, I don't want to miss a thing. So let's start with one of the main pain points. Currently, it's the chase after new ideas. Actually, we've briefly discussed this topic with Vladislav during Games Forum, but hopefully today we have more time and we can dive into this issue in a more detailed way. So how do you manage the whole innovation process within Sunday while still catering to current trends? I know that it's extremely difficult mentally and physically, especially nowadays in our saturated market when I guess you can't surprise the audience and you can't surprise the users. They are very spoiled.
Yeah, I can start. What we do in our team is the mix of like both generating fresh ideas and also getting a proven mechanic and twist it. So for fresh ideas, every person on the team has their own ideation methods, but I can talk about one of mine because I'm also getting with some ideas all the time. So basically, like I have a question list that is going to help me to find the rules of the gameplay. So I get an object, for example, or a toy or a noun, and ask questions. Such as what could be the action I do with this object? Can I clean something satisfyingly or break something? And I have a verb list that I'm going over and getting the most suitable ones for this object. And then I continue questioning, how can I control this object? What could be the wind condition? What could be the camera angle, etc. So when the questions finish, I have 2 or 3 options in my hand and I try to select the best one. So while doing this, of course, I need to check what are the current trends, which types of games are converting, etc. But I don't limit myself with these trends because why wouldn't we become the trendsetter? Then we have a weekly ideation meeting where everybody can present their ideas, and we collect ideas from even developers and artists. Actually, we have a really strong team, especially experienced in the hypercasual genre, who already worked couple of hit games. So the game design skills of our developers and artists are also really powerful. What we do is we collect these ideas and everybody brings their ideas and we select the best ones with the whole team and share them between the team members who is going to develop, etc. And as the second method, as I mentioned, we also twist some proven mechanics time to time. For using the proven mechanic, it's easy to say twist the mechanic, but most of the time you're breaking the core gameplay, which is already proven, and you have a completely different gameplay, different game in your hand, which might fail. Or you can also merge 2 proven mechanics, but again, it's completely different gameplay at the end. And on the ethical point, we are against directly cloning, of course, but I think it is okay to use a proven gameplay and change it, which is actually really popular and useful technique in the whole industry, even in PC and console.
Yeah, I wanted to ask that, as there are many copycats and there are a lot of questions around whether you can really profit from cloning some games, because actually you can save money, resources if you can clone or copy some mechanic and somehow adjust that. So why not? It's also a possible strategy if you perform it wisely.
Yeah, I mean, the cake is too big. It is huge. So even getting a small piece from that cake is enough for most of the publishers, actually, most of the small publishers or developers, maybe.
Hmm. And Vladislav, you do you participate in these brainstorming sessions with Umut?
Um, Usually not at this stage. So not in this stage of which idea should we use as the next game, as they have the bigger knowledge on their side, like what mechanics works and more insights, I would say, based on their experiences. When it comes to copying or cloning, the ethical question that you mentioned, I would say so. There is no doubt that, let's say, if you take the code and you copy it and you make your own game out of it, you download the images from the store and you use them on your webpage, there's no doubt that it's not ethical. Like, it's theft theoretically. It's just mental property which you're taking and then using as your own. Like, there's no doubt. But as he mentioned, like, to twisting the core mechanics and making it something different, which is still similar, has definitely, from the growth perspective, certain benefits, but then also certain risks. So I would say the main benefits, of course, are that you have enough inventory on the market to buy the users from. So you're sure when you're launching the product, there's going to be enough space on the UA side to buy the users from. And in particular, you know that your creatives and your whole game will have a higher marketability and higher performance because you will be shown on similar inventory. And on the other side, also the benefit is that on the monetization side, you can expect a high fill rate of those games. So you will have enough demand basically to have high eCPMs. But the threats and the risks are that high eCPMs don't come for free, as we know. So that means there is high competitiveness, and the high competitiveness leading you or forcing the developers like us to either outperform on the creative level, which is already super tricky, or which is even harder, to outperform on the LTV. So having the better games to be able to pay more for each of the users than the competition does.
Yeah, that's the vicious circle, I guess. So,
Yeah.
and Umut, you've also mentioned that you would like to be a trendsetter. So that's great, actually. But do you have this balance within Sunday between the trends that are performing pretty well and the unique ideas? So, would you like to have more unique ideas rather than the trends, or you are inclined more on the trends?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's really getting really hard to find a fresh, unique idea since there were so many hyper-casual games that have been tried in the past years. I think 2 years ago, the number was around 2,000, the released games numbers. And last year in 2022, the number was almost 20,000, so 10 times more. So as you can see, like it became so hard to make something fresh since whenever we think about an idea, it's been already made by a studio. Like, and then like we are checking the store and we are seeing the similar idea and the execution. If the execution was bad, then we can say that like, oh, okay, we can do better. So we are going on top of it. But if the execution was okay, the game was well done, then we don't have any choice than rather than killing the idea. So actually, this is the also one of the reasons that most of the publishers are going towards cloning and reseeking. And yeah, as Vlad said, like the second reason is like in the current market, it's pretty risky to make something really fresh. I mean, why wouldn't you try something already proven gameplay wise? Players already played that kind of game and they loved it. You just need to add some mechanic twists or change the team. So yeah, I mean, in Sunday we are just mostly focusing on like fresh ideas, but also we sometimes try if we see a trend, uh, if we believe that like it might be okay to list, we are just going that direction as well.
It makes sense. So imagine that we have a clear idea that is quite promising and we are moving to prototyping stage. And correct me if I'm wrong, here speed is a pivotal factor. So you need to act and refine quite fast. I mean, different prototypes, especially in hyper casual niche. So, how do you approach this rapid prototyping within Sunday?
Yeah, so our strategy is making the IPM products first, which is only a video. So we just make the video, not the game itself, and test the marketability. So normally we create the basic gameplay video with some marketing creative scenarios and only record the videos. Like there is no game at all. There is no level systems. There is no game systems. It's just like most of the time game doesn't work even. So we just record some videos and test the marketability. And this is why it's like so much faster and cheaper than making the prototype itself, the MVP. And like after the testing marketability stage, like if we get the good marketability KPIs, we then focus on the development of the game, development of the MVP. And we only produce like 3 days of content and check the game is sticky enough.
And what KPIs do you consider good, being good?
Uh, maybe Vlad can support at that point on the IPM and CPI side.
Yeah, what KPI? I think it's about the genre. Like for sure, you need a certain benchmark for your IPM if you do marketability tests. So you could say, I don't know, I only want game. If you know that your game portfolio usually performed in the past on the growth side on, I don't know, IPM of 70, then you can set a benchmark of this. But it's also important to understand that some games, especially the more the games with more depth in them, as Umut would say, they might have lower marketability, but then show better results in the last phases of the user performance. So it's very important to, on the one hand side, test as early as possible in the market and see how your audience performs, but also not too early to not mistakenly kill an unfinished great idea. So um, it more allows, it's not only about the benchmarks and hitting them, but it also allows you to test complex features which would take ages to implement into the game itself, but you can already test those features in the audience with the creators, for example, and you could see
Mhm.
how the reaction of those users are. So yeah, it's really hard to identify certain KPIs, but it's definitely the retention. Like at some stages, it's just the marketability, and then from there on, you move to retention and user behavior within the game.
Yeah, because sometimes I read some articles that if, for example, the churn rate of the prototype is more than, I would say, 90%, they consider that this idea is the worst of the worst and they don't proceed with that. But sometimes some publishers might give a second chance. So here you don't rely on only on the data, you allow some intuition to influence your choice, or you might give a second chance, right?
Kind of, yeah. We also like try different kind of teams in a similar gameplay mechanic, so it provides us to just discover more options. Let's say on the marketability side.
And if we expand on tools and techniques for prototyping, so can you name some of them?
I mean, user testing is the must. I mean, if we wanna quickly iterate or refine the game prototypes, we need to do the user testing in the early stages of the development. Like in certain stages, if we are not sure about a mechanic or a tutorial or a feature, we always go to another room in the office and let them play and gather feedback. There are some colleagues that is not so experienced in the games, so they are the best ones always, and like they tell you silently what is wrong in the game, so you can just check what's wrong in the game. And yeah, like also like fun fact, during this time we were just like going to the other rooms all the time and let them play the games, and then these guys started like playing games too much, so they become actually useless for us because they start playing games anymore, and then they know too much, like, so we can't just use them anymore, so we need to find some new people, I
You
guess.
can use me. I can test
Yeah.
them. Your
We
prototypes.
sent you
Just
the
send
prototypes.
over.
I mean,
Yes.
we started going like different floors now because everyone in Sunday just knows about games now, so we can't find anyone. Or we also tried some like external tools for playtesting. Several websites provide game testers for your game, like that they record the gameplay, make a survey, and like. But at the end, again, mostly they are less useful for hypercasual since we are aiming for non-gamers. But usually, most of these testers are there because they wanna make money and they are the players. Like they are already hardcore players, so they're not so useful for hypercasual, I would say. We also try some like new technologies. For example, it was interesting. Like we tested Brainamics, which is a playtesting company that converts brain signals into emotional feedback. And this way, they aim to increase the accuracy of playtest insights, at least what they say. And we found it pretty interesting, and tried in our couple of games to collect feedback. But again, like in hyper casual, it's really hard to use these kind of stuff.
What about AI?
Oh, AI.
It
I
might be
mean,
also useful, no?
for the playtest, or
Mm, yes, for prototyping, no? For creating different iterations, maybe.
yes, yes. Actually, yeah, Vlad, maybe.
No, I'm just imagining. I mean, that would be the hardcorest user of all the hardcorest users because the AI would know all the games and how every game looks, and they would just okay. Maybe at some point the AI could pretend to be a new user and not know how a game works and then give you feedback. But I'm not familiar with any accessible free AI which would be already on this stage. Usually it works with a lot of prompts, and as long as you don't explain exactly what it has to give you, it's tough to train.
Yeah, maybe in the future we will see this
Yeah.
evolution and some more tools that could help us to prototype and test the games. And as we've already briefly mentioned the testing stage, so let's talk briefly about the soft launch phase. And here, so I'm pretty interested in your strategy during the soft launch phase. What countries, what networks, what channels are you currently using to test your games, to gather some metrics and to understand whether this game is ready for a global release or no?
Yes, I guess I should be answering it. I would say the general strategy, as we already said, is you can start with social networks when you want really the quick early results. Like because it's a known fact that they just have more data about each of the users than all the other networks, which makes them able to find the right audience for you within like 50 conversions, and then you're already hitting the targets of the right audience, I would say. But then that's what we at least are using, especially for testing, which Umut already mentioned. When it afterwards, it really depends on the setup of each publisher. So yes, there are a lot of people that would go for like let's say familiar grounds. So they would use the UA networks of their monetization provider, and because they know that they are afterwards also getting maybe the best results out of it, and it's the easiest setup for them. But in my opinion, it does not really represent the overall future marketability of this game, because you ideally want, especially in hyper casual, to not have a niche product just performing on one game, but outperforming on all the networks. um, and then it really depends on, do you have in-app purchases or not. So if you have in-app purchases, DSPs could be a good choice. Like they have great algorithm to finding this specific one user that is really interested in spending the money within your app. um, and also they cover all the networks within a simple test setup. You will already have exposure to the majority of the biggest networks. But there are still some marginal questions and the CPIs that you will get out of the test, but could be a good choice. What we noticed is that for us, Unity is a good choice when it comes to really the simple setup, because if you have a lot of prototypes to test, especially when you publish with external studios and you have publishing managers coming up with prototypes every second day or so, then you want to have a simple setup. Then you might want to use Unity because it is a good representative for other SDK networks. Most of the people implement them on the monetization side, especially now since they merged with Iron Source. And also, this algorithm allows you to get quick results.
Mhm. And what
So that's
about
for the
the
network. Yeah.
countries?
Go on.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, about the countries, I like to think that this discussion is actually older than the first game that was ever sold. Like, in which countries are we going to test it? I would say so. Based on all the discussions that I'm hearing also in the industry, like we are in a lucky position that we don't have to think about early access or burning the market, or disappointing the users who already pre-assigned or like in the alpha or whatever. Like so, for us, it's a simple rule of thumb. So like we can say if we want to have clear results, and or if we have a content-heavy game, then it definitely makes sense to spend the budget, which you also need to have if you have the budget, in your core market. So you go for the English speaking, you go for US, you go for the English speaking countries, Canada, you can go for Australia. That's definitely more expensive. If you want to have statistical significance for a cheap price for your A/B tests, where you say, I just want to observe how the user behaves in a certain version. Like this level is now harder, this level is easier. But I need a huge amount of installs to say this is statistically significant. Then, of course, LATAM countries, Asian countries, the whole market is a good choice for you to go. And that's exactly how we do it. Like, really, depending on which feature we are about to test, we are then deciding, okay, what are we actually looking for?
Mhm. So we have now a successful prototype. We've passed through the soft launch phase. Now we need to put our game at a global level and we need to scale it. So what steps do you take first for a global release, and then after the global release, what is your further strategy to scale this game? Either you will develop it and attract more countries or more networks or some alternative channels to grow.
Um, yeah, I guess it's again. I mean, you can always say it depends. It depends. Like if you know that that your game is content heavy, there is no doubt that you need localization. Like users have to understand across the globe what your game is about and understand how to play it. In our industry, like there are some games that just don't require that much text. Like you can roll it out worldwide with English translation in there, and people will understand it because you take them by the hand in the experience of the whole game, and you show them, okay, now you have to do this, now you have to follow this. So their localization won't have a big impact based on our experience. Um, then other step is, of course, you want to get as many networks as possible, which you're working with, as fast as possible. You want to scale smartly, basically. So you want to transfer knowledge from one game from one network to another, from one geo to another. You want to scale. You want to find, let's say, representable networks. Representable countries for a whole group of countries. Let's say for LATAM, you take Brazil and you say, depending on the performance of Brazilian users, that's the expectation that we are having for other LATAM countries. So you already know as a growth manager, what can I be bidding for? What is the target? What is my ROAS goal for those countries? So you're not blindly starting a country and hoping for the best to not overspend. Um, and then the other thing is you need to keep track and have a proper roadmap because especially if you're talking about worldwide, there are a lot of countries. You might miss some of them. And the same for networks. You always want to test new networks because you might have a hidden champion. You might have a network which outstandingly performs for your game, I would say. So those are the most important ones. And I don't know, maybe when it comes to alternative channels for hyper casual, it's really tricky because most of the alternative channels are kind of looking for, the high ECPMs or high CPIs, like I say, influencer marketing also. They are a bit spoiled with some of the, let's say, social casino games, what they would be willing to pay versus what the hyper casual marketer would be able to pay for them.
No, just omni-channel strategy is quite popular, and many developers are trying to use it as well, like social. just creating social communities to boost retention and just to keep the interest for your games. So that's why I was asking, maybe at Sunday you would like to try something similar just to remain the retention level. But yeah, maybe for this niche it's not that relevant,
Yeah,
as I understand.
Yeah, you need
I
this
mean, it doesn't.
community. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work to create a community, like because like they're gonna play for 7 days, 14 days. Most of the hypercasual games just die after, let's say, 30 days. But yeah, it doesn't
But
work
how
it, I
then
guess.
to remain the high level of retention while scaling the game?
I mean, we
How to
try
sustain
to,
it?
yeah, we try to, while scaling, we try to also do live ops. So we keep actually improving the game. So it might be like optimizing the level churn, adding some more rewarded ad options, and like just optimizing maybe interstitial frequency. Like we are just keeping improving the game while scaling. So it tries to push the retention and playtime a bit high. But yeah, no communities.
I think it's also from the growth perspective, like you cannot expect to have immediately the same retention on scale that you had in the testing phase.
Yeah.
Just because it's simpler for the networks to find you the right audience when it's on a smaller scale than when you suddenly grow it by 100 times. But then you start actually optimizations on the network, depending on what you said. Like if you're on social networks, there are certain features that you can use to optimize and find the right audience. If you're on SDK networks, you go for source level optimization, or you start using the campaign systems that they are providing you nowadays to like pinpoint the right user, like this automatized campaigns, to find you the best retaining user, or the users who try to play the game for the longest time. Um, but yes, for hypercasual, like it's nice to have. It would be nice to have communities, of course. If you have long-term retention after day 30, I definitely agree. Then you can build communities. You can use also this hive mind, like this community mindset, and to test certain features. But yeah, for that you need this depth of the game.
But I think we are gonna see these communities in the next generation hypercasual. That's what we call it. Maybe you can call it like hybrid casuals. But in this next generation hypercasuals, I think communities might create even themselves, like on Reddit or something. I think it's going there.
Yeah, Umut, you've just brought the question I wanted to ask at the very end about this shift that everyone, I guess, is talking about, this shift from hyper casual to hybrid casual. So, from your perspective as a hyper casual publisher, do you think that this shift is inevitable? Because it seems that many developers are under this impression that the hyper casual games are dying. Is it true, or do we have a chance?
I mean, we are seeing the same experience. So it looks like it, yes. Like the old formula doesn't work anymore. But at the end, what I believe is like the games need to be good as always. So no more like, yes, oh, we found 10 cents CPI, so let's make an app, even not a game, which is going to show like 5 ads, and we earn some money already. So now we really need to make games which are player centric, so which is going to make like the quality much more higher, and at the end the better game design is going to win.
Yeah, that's the nice point. So,
Yeah, I have something. Wait, I have
yeah,
something to add to this, because I also think that it's all about the wording. I think that the hybrid casual is now hybrid casual, but it's the hyper casual of tomorrow. Because when I joined this company, our MD Chris had a really nice metaphor. He said, "We are here doing hyper casual games back then," and then he said, "It's like the popcorn that you eat. It's a easy snack, but it's not a full meal like a triple A title." And the more I think about it, the more it makes sense, because if you go to a cinema, like popcorn cannot become a spaghetti carbonara. But you also, if you're sitting in a cinema, you don't want to eat a spaghetti. You want to eat popcorn. And but previously, you were getting maybe simplest, worst tasting popcorn ever, but it was the only option, so you were snacking it. And now you're suddenly getting all this caramelized, salted. You have different variations, and now you want the user wants like the better version of it, but they still want the popcorn, and you still can differentiate even in 5 years. That's popcorn and that's spaghetti. Like it's not gonna mix together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice metaphor. Yeah. So,
He,
yeah, Umut.
yeah, he loves the metaphors, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I can
Yes.
see that. So currently, how many games are you testing? So what to expect from Sunday?
Oh, a lot. I mean, in Hamburg's internal team, we are currently working on like 4 games right now. I mean, they are just prototypes, so but on the publishing side also, like we have several games, but we are focusing on more deeper gameplays. As I said, like the old hyper casual formula doesn't work anymore, so we need to focus on deeper gameplays, more player centric games, which like is gonna be better game design at the end. So yeah.
Okay, so I will be waiting then for these games to test.
We will
Just
send you some
send
APKs.
over.
Yes.
Yes, I will be your tester free of charge. That's a great advantage, I guess. Okay, so I guess that's it. We've had an insightful dialogue with a lot of takeaways for me personally and for our listeners, I hope. So thanks, guys, for shedding light on hyper casual world. And please follow the blog section of Sunday to find out more case studies and more insights, and Apptica blog for not missing the next episode. So thank you guys one more time for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ksenia.
Okay.